Good morning, evening, and afternoon. I am the Professional, a content creator and live streamer, and in this video, I'm going to tell you why the Lost Ark's player base went from 1 million players down to 200,000 players in a month, why it's dying, and why or if it will rebound back. So let's jump into this Smilazon game. Lost Ark hit the Western market by storm, featuring a top-down MMO with extremely satisfying combat, good boss and raid design, excluding Virtus, and lots of horizontal content to keep completionists constantly on the move. Now, you may be asking, well, if it has all that, then why has the active player base dropped by 700,000 players? Well, that question is actually quite easy to answer. We are extremely impatient gamers. We want games that are completely finished, no bugs, endless hours of content, and big game updates every couple weeks. Game developers are unable to meet those demands, realistically. Now, I'm not saying that the game developers aren't at fault here, because they most certainly are. Why do they have such an impatient consumer base? That's because they hype up their product, get us the consumers salivating, and then rush the product out to the masses in order to ride that hype wave. What they don't mention is that the game is only 1/3 complete, and that their content roadmap is just the other 2/3 of the game being released slowly over time. So, now you're wondering how this tangent relates to Lost Ark. Let's dive in. Lost Ark was released in the Eastern countries back in 2019 with limited content. They added additional content that slowly dripped out over time. For instance, there were only a few Guardian raids and Abyssals, with more being released as time went on. This is the normal MMORPG model. Content is released, players slowly gear up to take on that content. After a majority of the in-game players conquer that content, they then release newer and harder content. When Lost Ark was ported over to the Western countries on February 11, 2022, we received a huge bulk of the content already included in the game. It's been just over a month, and Smilazon has already added additional content and special events to Lost Ark. Now, you may be thinking, well, doesn't this address your primary statement of the player base being impatient and needing lots of content? Yes, it does. But just wait, I'm getting there. Smilazon could have, and still can, drip feed us content on a consistent schedule with no issues, because the content is already there. It's been released and tested in Eastern countries, it just needs to be ported over. So what is the main issue for the game becoming stagnant? The main issue is islands. Islands. Now, I'm not referring to the event islands. I am referring to the honing islands. The islands are the cause of the game becoming stagnant. It's too late now, but if the islands weren't released until a later date, you could take a huge chunk of the current 1,300 players and drop them back to tier 2 or even to the start of tier 3 at this point in time. I'm not including the whales. As it currently is, any player can quickly progress from tier 1 to the start of tier 3 in no time at all, just by grinding all of the honing islands. If these honing islands were not available, it would have stretched the current in-game content out, and players would not be complaining about tier 3 honing rates, as they would still be progressing through the earlier tiers. This slowed progression would keep the concurrent player count up and create a more accomplished feeling for those players who completed Tier 1 and Tier 2. As it currently stands, Tier 1 and Tier 2 are looked at as trivial content and not part of the actual in-game. Yes, the primary argument here is that the islands are completely optional, but as I already stated, we are impatient gamers. Let's say you live in New York and someone in Florida has offered you your dream car completely free. You just have to drive down and pick it up. Are you going to drive on all the back roads to experience the communities of each state, or are you going to jump on the interstate and only stop when you have to use the bathroom? Exactly. And yes, I'm sure there's a good 5% of you that will be like, yeah, I'm going to drive every small road and really experience each state. But you're the minority. So, will Lost Ark recover from this? Yes, I do believe so. But Smilazon has greatly handicapped themselves. Lost Ark still has great potential, but I don't see them getting anywhere close to 1 million players again until they release a completely new tier to progress through. A new tier with a normal rate of progression that cannot be sped up with honing islands is about the only way they will be able to keep a consistent, highly populated player base. As a note, The Korean version is still in Tier 3, with players attempting to hone gear above 1600. If Smilazon does not make any changes and follows the Korean roadmap, this game will die, as an extremely vast majority of the player base will not spend a week on grinding materials for repeatedly failed honing attempts. It will be interesting to see what additional changes Smilazon makes to the in-game honing progression, as that is the biggest reason for players dropping off. What are your thoughts on this? Are islands the primary reason the game has become stagnant? Can Lost Ark continue releasing more Tier 3 content with the same low honing rates? Should they divert from the Korean model and develop Tier 4 content to create a normal, slower progression? I want to know. By the way, I absolutely love the gameplay and this game, so I am hoping for the best. Happy rating.